And we're back.
Welcome to No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
It is that time of year. PaizoCon is only 16 days away. And to get everyone hyped for it, to get everyone that's going possibly for the first time just on the right track to have the most fun and make the most out of your PaizoCon experience, we have, in many ways, the champion of PaizoCon, Paizo's customer service and community manager, Sara Marie. Welcome, Sara. Marie.
Oh!
Should I just call you Sara? Should I call you Sara Marie? I should have cleared this up before.
Either works. When I started at Paizo, I started using Sara Marie so that I wouldn't get confused with Sarah Robinson, who's our art director. So either one works.
Okay. Sara Marie, just in case Sarah Robinson makes a cameo appearance somehow in the background. So hello! Welcome to the show, finally, for the first time.
Yes. It's good to be on. Thank you for inviting me to be here.
So I say finally. How many years have we been neglecting to have you on the show?
Well, I know you asked last year, I remember, but with scheduling stuff, it's hard for me to have the time to be on here. So this is the first time it's worked out.
Well, we certainly.
But I guess that was my roundabout way of saying, how long have you been with Paizo? What's your Paizo history?
I've been with Paizo since 2009, which I think is like 8 years, going on 9. So been here about that long.
And how did you first get started with Paizo?
So I had been gaming. Someone had started this like D&D game using the Sandpoint Rise of the Ruin Lords adventure. And when I moved out to Washington, I was looking for more games to get into, and I found somebody who was running that game again, and I thought, oh, okay. But he was using Pathfinder rules, and so I got into it that way. And then at one point he said, hey, there's a job opening for customer service there. You should apply. And I did, and I got hired, and been here ever since.
Awesome. So it's good to know that you were a gamer before you started at Paizo.
Yep.
What first got you into gaming?
Star Wars, actually. I was in a Star Wars fan club in Austin, Texas, and then got into playing the Star Wars role-playing game with them, and then was looking, when I was in Michigan, I was looking for something like that and found D&D.
Cool. So I was recently reading a cool article online about that Star Wars role-playing game, the D6 one, and it.
Oh, that was the D21. Is the one that I was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So so you started as a Star Wars fan. You got into gaming. You got into Dungeons & Dragons. That got you into Pathfinder. And now that you're at Paizo, how has that changed your gaming habits and hobby?
Starting at Paizo, the amount of gaming I've done kind of went drastically down. But recently I've been, kind of so busy at work that there's not quite enough time to game. But I started playing in Stephen Radney McFarlane's playtest game during lunch, and then I've also been running some Pathfinder Society as well, which has been good to kind of get back in the gaming habit.
We've got a comment already about whoa green hair from Crick Walker 76. I guess before we get any further, do you feel like talking about your choice of hair color?
Had it for a couple years, I think, and it kind of varies between teal and blue and green, and I really need to get the roots touched up. It's about half natural now, and so I need to fix that, but
yeah, I'm
not a lot of time.
I'm surprised people commented. I mean, the green hair is awesome, but half the guests we have on here have like awesome hair like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, of course it's green hair. Why wouldn't it be?
Yeah.
Now it's interesting. So what do you prefer? You said that you were playing in a bunch of groups before, and now you said you're running PFS. So which side of the fence do you usually fall on, player or game master?
Up until recently, it's always been player. I do really like GMing. It's a lot of fun. I think I like being a player a little bit more, just because the amount of prep work, isn't quite as extensive. But I like both, and I enjoy both. And I've been doing the PFS games for customer service. So my team comes over, and we sit back, relax, and get to game together. So that's a lot of fun, just to be able to game with those folks.
And how does managing a group of lunatic players in a gaming session relate to managing the customer service at Paizo?
Both are fun. Both are a lot of fun, and it all depends on who you have. And I have really amazing people on my team, so I think that's the key.
So is this something that they're just surrounded by Pathfinder and Starfinder and whatnot every day, all the time, so they need to get into the world, or is this them learning more about the game and so that they know how to deal with customers?
They are all gamers. They all enjoy playing, so it's all about just kind of having fun and also making sure that we're not just concentrating so much on work that we forget the fun part of working for a gaming company. We all have these extensive libraries of gaming products, and it's like, we need to use these.
Oh, the woe of
That's
the collection that never gets touched. So what is life as a customer service for Paizo? What is that like?
It can vary drastically every day, kind of depending on if something happens, if we're doing our monthly subscriptions and something goes wrong and we've got to, drop everything and fix that. If I'm in the middle of doing PaizoCon stuff, that'll kind of take priority. Or if something like a paladin thread goes up on the message boards and I've got to focus on that. So it really varies a lot. Helping my team if there's stuff with our internal software that's not working, kind of using all my bag of tricks to fix orders and whatnot, and setting up charity requests, and just whatever needs to get done and doing it.
Well, I do have to say that I have I've been in contact with customer service several times over the last decade or so that I've been a customer of Paizo, and the team has always done an exemplary job. I don't think I've ever had any reason to complain, even when my orders, for some weird reasons that is not your all's fault, kept getting horribly, strangely configured. And not your all's fault at all. Not your all's fault at all. But yeah, your team has been one of the shining beacons of Paizo for a while, so I think that people should appreciate that aspect of the company a lot more.
Thank you.
It does feel actually like that was one of the things that stood out about Paizo when people were first discovering Pathfinder and discovering that there were different companies to be loyal to. So like, what is the trick to have such a well-received and I guess popular customer service?
Hiring the right people is definitely part of it, but also we try to give our customer service people a lot of freedom and leeway in what they can do to help a customer. So we don't have a list of rules about what you can and can't do for people. There's a lot of does this seem reasonable for this particular situation? And we try to really let them determine what needs to be done. So it's not locking them into, this doesn't quite fit this scenario, so I don't know what to do. They have a lot of leeway in how to help people.
It's true. There's a lot of hacks for larger company customer services where it's if you say speak to the manager, you're guaranteed to get $5 credit or something. Whereas it feels like with customer service at Paizo, it's just they'll treat you human, and that's pretty cool. They'll take your problem under consideration. The things that should be obvious for a customer service team, you just do it well and naturally, and that's always been appreciated.
Indeed. I've never once felt like I was talking to a robot.
Thank you.
So what's been some of the more interesting times for customer service at Paizo? Would this be the Starfinder binding episode, or
that was quite that was quite a nightmare for us, but for the most part, that one, because we could just replace, we knew we needed to just replace the product. That was fairly easy. It was just a lot of it. Sometimes some of the harder stuff where it's we got to ship this order and none of our usual workarounds are working. That can get really rough, especially if it's something that affects subscriptions where there's just so many orders and they've all got a complex fix. That can get really rough. Usually Gen Con, right around Gen Con is when it's roughest for customer service, just because the amount of issues that are coming up, all of the people who are getting that whatever hardback is releasing. This year it'll be the playtest. There's just so many more. So that's kind of, Gen Con is almost always kind of a tough time.
Yeah.
If there was one question that you wish could just be answered now and never be asked again, what would that be? Top 5 if you're having trouble narrowing it down.
Yeah, I can't. Yes, we will help you.
Oh.
I think is the one, is that we do get people who are surprised when they call. They're like, oh, you're just going to fix this for me? I don't have to, yell at you. I don't have to, call back 5 times in order to get this fixed. Like, sometimes we do take a little bit longer just because of the volume and our staffing, but we will fix it. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
And what are some of the more obscure specific things that why are you calling customer service for this type of scenarios?
So I mean, sometimes it's not necessarily obscure, but we do get people who want us to answer rules questions.
Oh.
And it kind of boggles my mind a little bit, because you don't want any of us answering rules questions. We all play, but we're not experts, and some of the stuff is just table variation and what your GM is going to allow, and we don't want to say something and then have, well, customer service said this. So we just don't answer rules questions. But some people are like, but it's just simple, and it's like, read our message boards. Nothing is ever simple.
See, this is a business opportunity. You guys need to make a new hire and start like the Nintendo tip line, but for Paizo, charge $1.99 a minute to get official answers.
I think everybody on the design team and in the org play would probably be very unhappy with some of our decisions.
Oh, goodness. Well, to be fair, if you follow the message board, sometimes not even everybody that should agree on it. So
yeah.
These are never easy issues.
Yeah.
But we aren't here to chat about customer service. There is a very big, very fun, and very purple event coming up soon.
Yes, because on top of being the customer service, manager, you are also the community manager. So what can the community expect from PaizoCon 2018?
I'm really excited about all of the playtest stuff, just because it's not the official playtest rules aren't coming out until Gen Con, and so it's an opportunity to share this thing that everybody's been working on for some people here years, to be able to share that with people and see reactions and stuff. So I'm really excited about that. To just all the playtest stuff. And it's also the first year that we're really able to get all the Starfinder stuff, like really get that on the schedule, and not just previews, but just go all out on it. And so I'm excited to see Starfinder on the, taking up stuff on the event schedule as well.
And then I just saw that the adventure card game, there will be a playtest for a new edition or an update of the rules. How's that going to work?
Yep. I'm not sure about a lot of the details on that, but I know that I think in the org play room they're going to be doing that. So the events are online. People can actually sign up for stuff right now, and I don't know a whole lot about the card game. That's one product that I'm not super familiar with as far as how the gaming and stuff works. I did play it once when it first came out. It was a lot of fun, but just not something I've had the time to commit to. So I'm not sure about the whole playtest stuff that they're doing.
It is interesting though. PaizoCon is one of the only places where I've met a large group of people that think of the card game first when you say Pathfinder.
Yes, and we do have that contingent of fans, and that's really exciting to see too, that product isn't just a role-playing game. Oh, and we also have the card game. It's its own brand, and lots of people are very excited about it.
I think that's one of the reasons that me and Ryan aren't also super caught up on it, is that it seems to be such a deep product with so much support that it is its own separate hobby branch. There's enough meat on the bone there to justify its following like that, and it's kind of surprising that, no offense meant to the game, but a spin-off product kind of grew as successful as that one has.
Yeah, it's been really fun to watch, and I've kind of been like watching a little bit on what they're hoping to do with the playtest stuff for the card game, and it sounds really interesting and maybe something that I'll be able to get into more as that comes out.
So with all of these different aspects that make up what Pathfinder and Starfinder and what Paizo produce, how do you balance all of that into a single convention?
It is difficult. It's kind of the focus that I try to keep for PaizoCon is just kind of a celebration of our community and our fans and also our staff, and making sure that the employees of Paizo are getting a chance to really get to have a fun time interacting with our community, and getting to kind of, I think for a lot of people, including myself, it's this reminder of why we're doing some of this stuff, like why we're creating these games. We get to see the excitement and the enthusiasm from our community, and kind of like, oh yeah, okay, these people are loving our stuff.
And besides the gaming, there's also the seminars, which obviously has been a major focus of ours for a lot of years. So how do you figure out just who's going to be talking on what panel, how many panels is appropriate, you know, the scheduling in general?
Sure. So we have a block from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. that we try to put kind of the bulk of our seminars in, and then kind of fill out more stuff. We have kind of a certain number of like evergreen seminars that we want to try and do every year. Those are panels like Ask a GM, Ask a Paizo GM, where people can, you know, ask their gaming questions to Paizo staff who are expert GMs. The like adventure path Q&A stuff, those are ones that we try to do every year, and then staff can also suggest other panels that they want to do, which are I think some of the best ones, because they're talking about stuff that they're really enthusiastic about, and I think that really comes through when you're talking to a group of fans, and they're there because they want to hear, you know, a particular person talk about what they love and what they enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, just one year, like the Brandon Hodge horror panel was just like some amazing work. It was some of the best panels that I've listened to, and we have listened to a lot of them. Yeah,
we Wes started, I think, a couple years ago, always doing a horror panel, and I wasn't sure if one was going to happen this year or not, since he's no longer at Paizo, but Kobold Press and Wolfgang are going to be doing a horror panel this year, so I'm excited. Yeah,
that does sound exciting. Any of the other panels that come to mind that you think our listeners should be like totally looking out for?
I mean, it totally depends on what aspects you're interested in. There's some that I'm hoping that I have a kind of a free spot in my schedule to go to, just because I love listening to my coworkers talk about what they're excited about. But there's one that's going to be about building faiths, like how you create, you know, a religion in a fictional campaign setting. Let's see. I think one that's going to be really popular for a lot of people is probably the introduction to the playtest. And
yes.
That's a 2-hour panel that the design team will be putting on, and then a follow-up seminar after that is how to playtest. And so if you're curious about like the mechanisms and what provides us good feedback and how to get what you think should be in that game, you know, in front of the designer's eyes, then, you know, that's definitely one that I think you would want to attend. We've just got a lot of really good ones this year. What makes a great dungeon? There's one that I think James Jacobs and Mark Moreland are doing, which is the evolution of Galarian and how the playtest, you know, what the playtest will mean for the campaign setting. So those are all, I think, ones to look out for.
I also noticed Monday you've got a giant block that's just playtest feedback.
Yeah.
What's the format of that going to be like?
I'm not sure. It's just a panel so far that the design team will be on, and kind of if you've gotten a chance to be in one of the playtest events over the course of PaizoCon and you want to tell the designers about what you thought and stuff, that would be the place to go. The designers actually, kind of one of the things I'm really excited about is that on Saturday morning and Monday morning, all 4 of our designers will be doing the Delve, I think it's like a 40-minute to an hour-long just kind of little mini adventure. And so they're all going to be there running people through that game. And I'm kind of excited about that because there's only 2 Delve tables, so 2 of the designers will be able to talk to people, answer questions, and I'm really hoping that that format is works for people.
That's a lot longer than the Delve usually is, right?
Yes. Because nobody's really interacted with the playtest rules outside of people within the company, I think it's kind of allowing some time for them to get familiar with some of the changes and stuff.
And this seems like a good enough time to remind our audience that if you miss panels at PaizoCon, it might not be the end of the world, because as usual, every year, we will have our volunteer team trying to record as many of the panels as possible. Also, good time to remind our live audience that this is indeed a live audience. So if you have any questions at all for Sara about PaizoCon customer service, not customer service questions, this is not the time to ask her why your book is late. But if you've got any questions for our guest or us, ask them throughout the episode and we will forward them on air.
You mentioned Cobalt Press was going to be there. They've been there for a lot of PaizoCons.
Yes.
What are some of the other third-party publishers that people can be excited to meet?
Legendary Games, and what they do every year is they have their Legendary Special, and so that's one of the evergreen rooms. They just take up all the tables in there and they run their multi-table special, which I've always hear great things about. And then we have a lot of other like smaller third-party companies who are doing stuff there as well. I didn't print off the names of those, so I'm not sure, and I don't want to misspeak. So let's see. Oh, here's one. I know Necromancers of the Northwest will be there. They've got a seminar and various other things. So.
They have such a great
I know
name.
Reaper Miniatures been there in the past, but it's usually Brian Stilts, and he's not with the company anymore.
Yes,
will there be a paint and take this year?
Yes, Reaper will be sponsoring the paint and take again. So.
Excellent. Do you know who's representing them this year?
I do. I have their emails in my inbox, but I don't remember the name offhand, so I don't want to.
No, that's on me. That's too specific for something to just jump on you.
Yeah, but
I didn't even realize there was still going to be a paint to take, so that's exciting. So that's always something that if I just need to decompress or if I've been talking to people a little too much, just go and paint a miniature. You get a miniature out of it, you get 10, 15 minutes to just change your brain, and you can ask people questions about painting.
Yeah, and another kind of all-day event kind of thing from another company, Steve Jackson Games will be having some representatives to demo Munchkin Pathfinder and Munchkin Starfinder. So if you like the Munchkin games, which they're awesome, so you should go play them. I think they're in one of the evergreen rooms, and you can just sit down and play with them for a while.
Yeah, I think the Steve Jackson room was PaizoCon 2017's big surprise for me. It was somewhere that it did not feel like a lot of people were ever there, but I got treated like a king whenever I did show up because they were kind of dying for people to go. But I got to play a lot of Munchkin, got to play a lot of their different games, and they were giving out exclusives, freebies. It was great.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and they did a great job with Munchkin Pathfinder, capturing a lot of the flavor of the game. And I'm a huge fan of the Munchkin card game. I'm trying to see exactly how tall I can get the decks.
You know what? I mentioned PaizoCon 2017. This is the 11th PaizoCon. How has it evolved as a convention since 2000? Well, you weren't at 2008, so since 2009.
2009 was the first PaizoCon I'd ever went to, and the only one that I've gone as an attendee and not as somebody who works for the company. And it was also one of the first if not the first gaming convention that I'd gone to. And it was just really exciting to get to sit down and play with and see so many other gamers. I hadn't really had that experience before of just having so many people around who love to game. And so that was really neat, and that was one of the takeaways I had from that PaizoCon. But also, so that was when we were still doing 3 days, and on Sunday afternoon, as things were kind of winding down, a lot of people from the Paizo staff kind of had all gathered in this area, and attendees were just able to go and talk with whoever and just sit and chat with people, ask whatever questions they had. And so I've been trying to figure out a way to kind of recreate that a little bit, that feeling of like being able to just sit down and chat with whoever. We're kind of at this point where there's so many employees and there's so many attendees at PaizoCon that's a little bit hard to facilitate. So this year, on Monday, which is kind of a difficult day for me to schedule anyway, since a lot of people are flying out and using that as their travel day, I ended up taking, I think, like 20 to 30 of our staff, and we're going to set up in the one of the Evergreen rooms, or 2 of the Evergreen rooms, and bring board games, card games, any kind of like casual games, and people can come up and just pick a spot and sit down and play, chat, kind of a relaxed but still a little structured environment. There's no pre-sign up for it, so anybody can just come and chit-chat and play games.
That sounds great. Like a little golem.
What time's that starting at? What time does that start at?
I think I have it. I can't remember what we ended up going with, but it's like 11 to 1.
I gotta check when I'm flying out, but I think I leave at 1. So unfortunately, I think I'm missing that.
I have a late night flight, so I am not missing that.
Montreal and Seattle do not like flying to each other, apparently. I either have to go super early in the morning or all the way at night.
Now, this is going to be my first PaizoCon, but I am usually front and center every Gen Con. So how can you contrast the feeling of the PaizoCon compared to some of your other appearances at, say, Gen Con or Origins or PAX?
Well, for one, it's almost the main focus of the show is Paizo. You know, at Gen Con, there's so many companies that are running stuff. This one is the main focus is Pathfinder. You can still find some other games and find people running various other stuff, but Pathfinder and Starfinder, I should say. And so it's much more focused on, you know, the Paizo as a company rather than a bigger convention where there's going to be focus on a lot of different games and a lot of different companies. It's also one that our entire staff goes to. So if you want to talk about, you know, what it means for a game company's, you know, operational staff, you can find our ops people. They're not going to go to some of the other conventions, but they'll be at PaizoCon. So.
What about somebody who's trying to make a career out of this and using PaizoCon as a business trip? What are some of their opportunities, and what should they do and see?
If it's the gaming industry stuff, I absolutely recommend a workshop that two former employees, Liz Quartz and Ashley Caprillion, they have done several years in a row, and even though they're not at Paizo anymore, they're going to do it again. And they talk about kind of some of the business aspects of using the Pathfinder and Starfinder compatibility license. Liz talks a lot about the license itself, and Ashley kind of has a presentation on stuff about taxes and how to make sure that you don't, you know, come to the end of the year and find out you owe a lot of money because you were a contractor or something. And I don't know all the details. I'm not an accountant at all, but I've sat in on their presentation before, and it's amazing. It's a wealth of knowledge. So that one I think is on Saturday or Sunday. And so if you're coming as a business trip, I absolutely recommend that. And then there's also a ton of seminars for writing and creating games. There's a seminar where they talk about monster design and planet design. So if you're looking for that kind of stuff, absolutely check out the seminars.
I'm not sure what Cryptwalker comment. Cryptwalker, what do you mean that's 9 or 10 hours at highway speeds? Oh, no, I'm sorry. He's responding to somebody else in chat. I thought he was responding to something you just said. I was very confused.
Though we do have a question from chat. It comes in from Jay Franklin and asks, is Cosmo still always to blame?
Yes, yes, he is. And I am still always available to praise for whatever you need.
All right. Perry mentioned this is his first time at PaizoCon. So where can people go to eat if they've never been to this venue before? What can they do when they're not doing the PaizoCon stuff?
There's a bunch of restaurants in the nearby area. There's a Hawaiian restaurant that is so good. They have amazing spam musubi, which I will definitely be going to get at some point. The hotel also has food, and it's very near the light rail station. So if you're interested in doing the tourism stuff in like Seattle, there's a light rail that can take you right there.
Excellent. So the first PaizoCon was a fair bit closer. So this is at the DoubleTree, right?
DoubleTree by Hilton, yeah. So it's right by the airport. We've had it at various locations over the years. The Coast Hotel in Bellevue. There's a hotel in Redmond that we did it at once, and another one down in SeaTac. And this one has seemed like a pretty good fit for us so far.
And
it also felt like you were outgrowing every venue every year.
Yes.
But DoubleTree seems to be able to support you for at least another couple of years.
Yep. I hope so.
So what is the attendance usually like for PaizoCon?
I think it's around between 600 and 800. I think this year I was checking the tickets. I think we'll probably hit our all-time maximum that we've had. So I think we're probably looking around 800 or 900 people for this year. So it's a small convention, and that does mean that attendees have an opportunity to interact with staff more so than you might, definitely more so than you would find at Gen Con or other large conventions.
And what are like some of the special guests that you're bringing in, or that sort of thing?
So this year we have kind of a little bit different special guest. We actually have the entire Glass Cannon podcast crew as one special guest, and they're running a bunch of gaming podcasts and games. They're finishing up their Crypt of the Everflame playtest that they had done a podcast for with Jason and Eric, and so they're going to do that as a live show. And they also have a room, one of the Cascade rooms, available for pickup games to just sit down and play with them. And then we also have Taylor Fisher, who has done a whole bunch of art, I believe for both Starfinder and Pathfinder. And so we have some panels with her, and then she's also able to, I think she'll have her art in the store that you can purchase and ask her questions about being an artist for Paizo.
Oh, that sounds great. I know that one of the things we struggle on as a podcast here is just trying to emphasize how amazing the Pathfinder art and design and layout is, because in a lot of ways we strongly feel that you guys have really pushed the industry, and it's one of the big reasons that industry-wide the quality of the product has gone up so much is because you guys brought the game and everybody else was forced to match. So it's really good to see some of the artists getting some of the spotlight.
Yep. Yeah, every year we always try to have kind of a gaming guest of honor and a artist guest of honor to make sure that we're highlighting how important the art and visual aspect of Pathfinder is.
Well, we got an interesting question here from Creeper Coffin in chat. The chat seemed to be right on top of answering it, but this is a good one to for any of our audience that doesn't know. Creeper Coffin asked, when was the first PaizoCon anyway, and why did Paizo decide to make their own con?
So the first one was in 2008, and it was organized by Tim Nightingale and kind of the fan crew, and it was just real small, in the basement of a hotel, catered by, you know, pizza. And it was just, you know, hey, let's have some Paizo people and get together. And then after that, it was like, wow, people want to come meet Paizo staff. We should do it ourselves. And then 2009, Paizo organized it. And then 2010, I started at Paizo, and it's been going with Paizo ever since.
Yeah, 2010 was my first year, and while it was like it was super memorable and it was fun, but it was really small. Like, to hear that now it's up to 600 to 800 people, just thinking back, it was not that long ago that it felt like I was one of maybe 100 guests. Maybe that's even an exaggeration.
Yeah. So it's grown a lot, but it's still a pretty small convention, and it's still, I think it still has that feel of it's very intimate, like, gaming experience.
So while the rest of us are enjoying this event that you and the crew have organized for us, how are you going to be spending your PaizoCon?
So I typically end up kind of walking around the hotel, making sure that games seem like they're going in order, that rooms are, you know, being kept up, and there's no questions about kind of schedule mix-ups. You know, sometimes in the booklet will say the wrong room number, or the ticket will say the wrong room number, and so just straightening all that out, making sure that people who have reserved space for games are getting it, that kind of stuff. I also work in the store sometimes, and just kind of handle anything that comes up.
Full professional mode.
Yes.
I've always been surprised that there's not more of an emphasis on the store. Like, you can get just about any Paizo product that's still in print that I can think of, but it really, like, when you compare it to Gen Con, which feels like it's 90% exhibit room floor, the PaizoCon store is just kind of like this quiet little thing that you can tuck into between games.
Yeah, it stays relatively busy. We do pretty good, but it also has kind of a quiet atmosphere where it's pretty relaxing going in there. Just there's not a lot of ambient noise, and so it is kind of relaxing just to sit and shop in there too. We have some third-party publishers that have their tables out, and we'll usually have a representative there as well to answer any questions. Cobalt Press, Legendary Games, and stuff for sure. And it's the PaizoCon is not an opportunity for us to really push, hey, you have to shop with us. PaizoCon is really play games with us, listen to seminars, come interact with us, meet us in the bar, whatever. We want to make sure we have that opportunity for people if they've forgotten something, or if this is the time when they're going to go buy their adventure pass for the year. We want to make sure we have those available, but we haven't really put a big emphasis on shopping. It's much more an emphasis on experiencing Paizo with the staff.
This is so anathema from what I'm used to with your booth, because usually I'm at the Gen Con representative for the network, and so when I get in there before the doors open, and it's like I think it was less intense when I was surviving Hurricane Hugo than it is some of the rushes of madness that hit the booth there.
Yeah, that first morning of Gen Con when the doors open and people just rush in, and it's amazing to watch and also slightly terrifying. I'm usually on the register at that point, and I'm always glad that I have like a wooden booth around me, just like protect me a little bit.
I'm going to be there with the camera this year. Maybe I should just bring some life preservers and hand them out to all the blue shirts.
In the past, the stores had a section for scheduled time with certain staffers. Is that something that's, I don't even remember if it was there last year, but is that something that's continuing this year?
No, it didn't seem to quite gel the way that we needed it to, so I don't think we did it last year, and we're not planning on doing it again this year. Partly just because most people you can kind of track down. So, you know, looking at the event schedule and stuff, you can probably find who you're looking for at some point during the convention, even if it's, you know, in the bar at night and you just want to say a quick word.
Do you want to talk about the nightlife at PaizoCon for a bit?
So on Friday night and Sunday night, the organized play has their specials that they run, and then in addition to that, there's also the bar and hanging out. Most of the Cascade rooms are also still open. Some of them will have scheduled games, but you can also go in there, and if you want a individual table or a private room to game in, you can go in there. Any room that's not having a scheduled game in it is open. I know there's a crowd that usually plays Cards Against Humanity, and then BarCon, hanging out in the hotel's bar and kicking back and meeting new people.
You mentioned there's a special on Friday night. I was actually looking for it earlier. I thought there was only a special on Sunday. Did I just miss the Friday one?
I thought there was a special on Friday night. I sure hope there is, but now that I've said it, but I could be wrong about that. I think it's on both Saturday or Sunday and Friday night, and then we have the banquet on Saturday night.
Mm-hmm. Yes, let's talk about the banquet. Banquet is always a highlight for us.
Yeah. This year we actually just earlier this week had our first time I think we've ever done this, where we've sat down several weeks in advance and planned out what we want to have in the presentation. So I think this is I'm expecting this to be one of the smoothest banquet presentations that we've had.
When do you usually plan it out?
I'm not usually involved in that process, and I think it usually gets done like a week or two in advance. So it's kind of last minute, like, oh, we got to pull slides together for this. And they always do an amazing job. But this year we're like, okay, let's focus and create a little bit more of a structure to make sure that it is smooth and exciting and that we're saying what we want to say. So I think there's going to be lots of good stuff, and it's going to be really exciting this year.
Yeah, I do remember one of the early ones. It just felt like every segment of the Paizo staff got a little presentation, and it went on quite long.
Yes.
But in the last couple of years, it's really been a much tighter ship. It's just a very specific couple of presenters that talk very specifically about the products that most of the people there seem interested in. So the banquet, I consider it a must-see, like a can't-miss event.
Yeah, and this year, we kind of said, okay, how much time is this going to take? How much time is this going to take? And then we kind of added it up and said, all right, we have this amount left. It's quite a significant chunk. That's the section Jason's going to talk about the playtest. So there's going to be a lot of content on that at the banquet, and I think people are going to be really excited.
Nice. And we shouldn't undersell that the food is always good, too.
Yes.
It is a great meal.
Wait, there's actually food at this banquet?
People always comment, like, I'm impressed with the food, and the hotel staff does an amazing job on just the cooking and the options and stuff, and it's been really good food every year.
I mean,
yeah, go ahead, Bram.
It's mad props to you for doing that, because I'm pretty sure you could have gotten away with bowls of Cheetos and Mountain Dew.
Yeah, there's a coffee bar open the whole night. There's a pay bar that you can, buy drinks at. Mm-hmm. It's a full fancy event, Param. And bring a nice shirt, because I have made the mistake of not bringing a nice shirt.
I've begun taking. Owen did a presentation at, I think it was a PaizoCon recording that I was helping edit, where he said that always dress up for con events as opposed to wearing geek clothing. So ever since he's done that, I've always showed up to Gen Con with at least BizCash or better.
One of the nice things about Seattle that I really appreciate, and I don't know if that's why this happens at the PaizoCon banquet or if it's just the general kind of gaming stuff, is that we do have people that like to dress up for the banquet, but shorts and t-shirts, totally fine. We're not going to turn you away for that. There's no dress code for the banquet. And so, Seattle has that kind of atmosphere of a little bit more casual and not needing to be as fancy. But if you are dressed up, nobody's going to look at that askew either.
But Jason Keeley's the only person that goes with a cape, right?
They can't. This is a geek con that he can't be the only one in a cape.
One thing that I'm surprised we don't see more of at PaizoCon traditionally is cosplay. Is this something that has it been on the rise and I maybe haven't noticed? Is this just something that's just not emphasized at this convention?
It hasn't. We've tried a couple of years. It is kind of, since it is kind of a smaller convention, I don't know if that's kind of the thing that is holding people back from that, or if the people who come to PaizoCon just don't tend to do cosplay, or they're so busy, doing PFS games that they don't, or org play games that they can't find the time to do go around in a costume. Eric Keith, who's on our tech team, he does QA. I think almost always has his Valoros costume. So he at least there's going to be one cosplay at PaizoCon. And over the years, there's always a couple at PaizoCon, and we love to see it. So if you're on the fence about doing cosplay, I would recommend it just because the staff loves it so much.
So obviously we need to finish your Skittermander outfit in the next few weeks, Ryan.
I think I could pull it off. I have a puppet around here. I don't know if we could sacrifice him for parts, though. He's part of the family.
Okay, so
let's see. We are coming up on almost an hour, so we should start wrapping things up because I know that you've got a pretty tight schedule.
Yeah.
It sounded like you had a question.
Yeah. I was saying that, well, it sounds like PaizoCon's going to be awesome, but you're also one of the leading charges of the Gen Con effort. For those of us looking forward to that convention, what can you say on that front very briefly?
So Gen Con is actually, most of the stuff is done by my boss, Jeff Alvarez, for planning that kind of stuff out. So mostly I help set up the booth and, lay down the floor tiles and helping, put out products and stuff. And he does most of the other scheduling and stuff for that. So I don't have anything to do with the Gen Con events, so I don't know a whole lot about that.
Oh, we haven't talked about the Kingmaker, the video game. Will Owl City be present at PaizoCon?
Owlcat, yes.
Owlcat.
Yeah, we actually we'll be having some computers in the store, in the PaizoCon store, and you'll be able to play either the Owlcat Kingmaker game or the Pathfinder online, and you can kind of check both of those out, or whichever one's your favorite, and get to see how those play. The Kingmaker one, I haven't seen in a while, but I know Mark Moreland has been keeping up with it and has been really impressed with it. So maybe I'll have a few minutes at PaizoCon that I can actually sit down and check it out.
Well, I did back the Kickstarter, and I know recently it went into a beta playtest or another phase of playtest. Yeah. So yeah, that'll be exciting.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to that one. It is everything I hoped it would be from everything I've read.
All right, so last couple of questions, unless something comes in from chat. What is something that you think doesn't get enough attention at PaizoCon?
I'm not sure. Probably the delves, I think. It's an opportunity for people to sit down and have a quick game, and I think you can play it whenever it's open. You don't have to register for it, so if you didn't get lottery games or you didn't really have a full schedule that you had planned out for seminars and stuff, you just sit down and get to play with staff and do a little adventure. And if nobody's in line behind you, you can play it again. I think that it's a great opportunity for people to enjoy some staff gaming without having to register in advance.
It's true. I've gotten to play with some really great GMs. Like Owen ran me through a delve one time. He asked me if I wanted to do hard mode or easy mode, and I told him hard mode, and then he was very hard. It was a poor choice on my part because that was a very short delve. But Crystal ran me through where just Captain Planet effectively exploded, and we had to fight all the elementals that came out of his dead body. And I know Cosmo likes to play with his the custom-made McDonald's monsters that Reaper tends to make him every year.
Yep. So those are always fun, and individual staff people will kind of put their own flair on the delve as well. So it's always a fun time.
What is something that you have noticed people forget to bring?
probably the one that affects me the most because my team runs it is at registration. People sometimes forget to bring their ID. So you always want to make sure you have your driver's license or state ID handy when you come down for registration. It's something that it's funny. Every year people are a little bit worried that they're not going to make it through the line in time. And we get through the line in about 45 minutes to an hour every year.
Yeah, registration is one of the smoothest parts of the whole convention. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah.
Like, it's a pretty casual convention, but like registration is handled very like the opposite
Very
of
efficient.
casual.
Yeah.
I'm lost.
Yeah. And that's also, so one thing that we try to do every year is have customer service being the ones doing the registration. And we find that just a lot of people are kind of excited to see who they've been talking to on the phone or via email, the people who've been helping fix their orders and stuff. So it's an opportunity for our staff too. They'll be like, oh, I recognize this name just from having helped people. And it's fun for both customer service and I think for the attendees as well.
Awesome. Param, as a first-timer, any last questions you need covered?
Yes, how many dice is too many dice?
I am the wrong person to ask about that. I have a large collection of dice.
Param,
How many dice is too many? Can they fit in your suitcase?
Maybe.
My first PaizoCon, airport security confiscated my dice.
Like what?
I had to buy a set at the convention, which I'm just glad was there. But yeah, I had maybe $100 worth of dice, and it was like they were my green and gold sets. It was all color coordinated. I put a lot of care into those dice.
Why?
And I didn't even know until I got to my room. I just pulled open my luggage. There was a note saying, "Oh, we had to look through your bag because there was something suspicious," and they just did not put the dice back in, or maybe unintentionally. Maybe somebody pocketed a nice collection of dice, but that.
Yeah.
That was not fun.
Oh.
Sorry.
Luckily we do have them in the store, so.
Yes. Yeah, you hooked me up because that could have screwed up my whole convention.
Any gaming supplies that you do forget, we probably have some in the store, so.
Actually, like the fun section of the store for me has always been like there's a lot of trinkets and game aids and stuff that like maybe we'll hear will be coming and then just kind of gets lost to the ether. And you see it in person for the first time because it usually also doesn't make the trip to Gen Con. So there's just the one dedicated rack of like curiosities that it's always the first thing I go straight to.
Yeah.
I am going to need to save some room in my luggage.
Yes. Which is also why I didn't have appropriate dress that one PaizoCon because I just kept going with a smaller and smaller suitcase. And then that year I was just too small. So this year I'm going with my big suitcase, Param. I don't care if it's half empty when I'm going. It won't be when I'm coming back. All right, excellent. So thank you very much, Sarah Marie. Where can people find out more about you and about PaizoCon?
Just on Paizo.com, definitely. There's, I think right now one of the banners on the site is for PaizoCon, so should be hopefully pretty easy to find. And yeah.
Excellent.
All right, excellent. Well, we will be seeing you in 16 days. Yes. I hope that number doesn't make you nervous.
It does. It does.
Well, I'm sorry, but it's the truth. So, have a relaxing 16 days if you can.
You too.
All right, thanks again.
Thank you.
We will be right back with some Pathfinder news right after this.
Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news.
And we're back.
In the Pathfinder news section, we talk about all the happenings all the latest happenings for the Pathfinder role-playing game, for Pathfinder-related products, for things that are just of interest to Pathfinder fans. And, of course, the big news, the big change to the Pathfinder role-playing game is 2nd edition. So Paizo has been pretty consistently putting out blogs covering various topics, and, oh, man, they've been really good about just, like, chunking information into, like, here's a single topic, here's a whole bunch of stuff that we have not even touched on elsewhere, but it all makes sense to be handling it under this topic. And for the most part, it's been handled very well by the community and by Paizo. The community is not always the best representatives of us, unfortunately. Param, did you have a chance to read the Paladin thread?
Yes. That is, okay. People have very strong reactions to this one class, and I am baffled as to why this one class gets such strong emotions attached to it.
Well, I suspect it has something to do with alignment, which is one of the more abstracted sections of the rules, and just happens to be one of the core thematic elements of this class.
Indeed.
And so everyone has different interpretations about what the word lawful even means, which is very important for the paladin since they have to be lawful good. People have feelings about why they have to be lawful good, why there cannot be non-lawful good paladins. And as the blog post even mentions, even the staff has very different and strong opinions about the paladin. And so of all the classes from the first edition core rulebook, this is probably the one that will be most contentious and will require the most people to just sit down and diplomatically figure out what the heck is a paladin? How is this thing supposed to work?
Indeed, especially since they're making some actual legitimate changes to the class that I have not seen since basically any previous edition. Usually the paladin is kept to the strictest of codes, and it seems to be just like a giant list of ways the GM can take your powers away. And a whole bunch of moral quandary traps that you can get stuck in. And it looks like they're trying very hard to address that this time around.
So that is a story that I often hear that I don't have any personal experience with. The idea that as soon as somebody says they're going to play a paladin, they know that the GM is out to take their powers away as soon as possible. Is this, have you ever seen this, either as a player or a GM?
I've only ever seen this for a particularly terrible GM that I had the misfortune to play under for a thankfully short while before we had the mutiny. And then I became GM.
So the closest thing that ever happened in my game, Matt was playing a monk with the Oath of Silence, and at one point he spoke. So there was no gray area there. It was, he can't talk. He talked that one time. You know, it probably could have been a more dramatic moment. I questioned why he chose to, but it wasn't like, there was no room for interpretation as the GM. He broke that oath very clearly. Whereas the paladin, I've only had a few paladins in my campaigns. It is usually Matt, actually. He's a big fan of the class. But it just never occurs to me to really just watch for them to break the code. But apparently that is a very common behavior among GMs.
I just think that's a behavior amongst adversarial GMs that or beginning GMs that have read lots and lots of stories online of how games in the past have gone. And so there's a few phases that a lot of GMs go through during their embryonic stages of becoming excellent. And adversarial phrase or trying to evoke some of the grandeur of the past is definitely part of it. I find that most of the time there isn't as much of a difficulty in my experience, because it would just be like there's just a few things that we're tired of in play, and a lot of it is things like, oh, well, naturally we're going to have the mandatory encounter where we take all the fighters' weapons away, or naturally we're also going to have the thing where we take the wizard's spell book, and oh, we need to do something to cause the cleric to get not so happy with his god or her god. And just a few of the it's not so much that they're bad stories, it's just stories that have just been done to death, and you're not really signing up for misery every time you want to play a game, and you definitely don't want to be intentionally targeted. I do think that it is important that if a GM has a paladin in their group, that as you would read a character sheet and read it as, this is my players telling me what they want out of my game based on how they've invested in their characters, when you see a paladin, you definitely want the moral code to come up and their dedication to it to be tested, but not set it up intentionally to ruin the player. That's a far different task. I mean, a thief wants to solve traps. They don't want you to set the impossible trap that kills their character off. That's not what they're signing up for. They're signing up to be challenged and then hopefully overcome the challenges that they have aligned themselves to. When you make impossible challenges, or you're purposely set out to ruin a character concept or to ruin a player's fun, then you remember how we always say that most of the conflicts usually are personal and it needs to be talked out, and don't be a jerk. This is the case where the GM is being the jerk.
Creeper Coffin has a question: if the comments in the Paladin thread are worse than in the Goblins thread.
I think the Goblins got worse. I mean, that got ugly. Yeah. That got darn near. I mean, I'm surprised that the Goblin threads got so bad that I'm surprised they didn't just shut the forums down like CNN did.
I have a feeling that because most of what the posts in the Paladin one are, like, those are conversations we've been having for decades. Mm-hmm. And so there's only so much you can get riled up about something that has been said, whereas the Goblin was fertile ground. And so people felt the need to express themselves. They thought their ideas were new. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, they thought the best way of doing it was trying to yell down at everyone and getting just ridiculous and personal.
Yeah. It's never cool to be ugly, people. I mean, have disagreements without just resorting to terrible behavior. I mean,
I disagree, and that's a stupid hat, Param. Oh, I'm sorry. You know I love your hat.
Oh, this hat is not long for this world, though.
Oh, no!
Oh, it's got
sorry, hat.
I've been looking for a replacement, but I can't find one in my size. It's a very hard thing to find for a head this large. But let's go over at least a brief overview of what Paizo has done to the Paladin that would be eliciting reactions.
All right. Well, first of all, they have gone full Isaac Asimov on the Paladin code. Mm-hmm. They have taken everything that was already in the code and they have prioritized it. So, never willing to commit an evil act such as murder, torture, or casting an evil spell. And I know casting an evil spell, that just triggers a whole certain reaction from a certain amount of people. And to a degree, I understand the argument, but not the reaction. That is the worst. You never willingly commit an evil act. Next one, never take an action that you know will harm an innocent, or through an action cause an innocent to come to immediate harm, immediate being an operative word in a sentence, when you knew your action could reasonably prevent it. Tenant doesn't force you to take action against possible harm to innocents or to sacrifice your life and future potential in an attempt to protect an innocent. All of this is also dependent on not having to violate the first rule to make this happen. So you cannot commit murder to save an innocent. If it's just two innocent people are fighting over a disagreement or whatever, you cannot take a side and kill one of them to save the other one. Mm-hmm. You must act with honor, never cheating, lying, or take advantage of others. So again, if it will save the life of an innocent, you can lie or cheat or take advantage of others. If it will, if the only alternative is killing or torturing someone, you can lie, because this is a lower priority code or element of the code. And you must respect the lawful authority of the legitimate ruler of leadership in whichever land you may be, following their laws unless they violate a higher tenant. Mm-hmm. So if you are in an evil kingdom, you do not have to follow the evil laws. You have to be somewhat respectable to the fact that this is the order of the land and that the person is the leader, but if you are forced to compromise the above ones, and the immediate harm to innocents probably would be the one that is most likely to be violated in order to respect the law of an evil dictator, then you are allowed to break this last bottom tenant to preserve the above tenants.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And besides those tenants and the fact that they are now ordered, and I can already see like the Robotech holovid in every one of my paladins and waiting for him to get fired so he can cross one off his list. They also are forced to be lawful good, at least for the playtest going forward, which I think is probably what most people seem to be reacting on, more so than the I would say, improvements to the Paladin code. They mentioned that they structured it like this so that the Paladin could not be caught in so many no-win situations. The example they give is lying to a lawful authority in order to not put innocent people who would be harmed by that lawful authority should they tell the truth.
Yeah, and they are open. Let me see if I can find the exact quote, but they are open to the idea of chaotic evil anti-paladins and lawful evil tyrants. This is just not going to be in the first playtest document. This is something that will potentially be opened up to in the future, but for the sake of playtesting the class, go with the one that is most likely to be in players' hands. And I don't think they even consider the idea of a neutral paladin, or they don't call out that they're considering that, but they do seem to be considering the paladins of the four extremes, which that is part of what separates a paladin from a fighter. They are someone with a code. They follow an extreme ethical calling.
Indeed. And I think that is important because a calling of no calling would be very difficult to perceive in roleplay. I mean, how do you portray a neutral paladin? I mean, I have a code of compromise in all situations, therefore is infinitely adaptable. Which are definitely characters that can exist in the world, but it seems hard to smite someone for having strong opinions one way or the other. I mean, that would be difficult. We have a question from chat that I think is a good time to bring it in here, which is from Rane Zero or Rain Zero.
I'd say Rain Zero.
First time GMing with a paladin in the party. How would you test their commitment to their code without outright trying to take away their powers? I think one of the best ways is to bring up situations in which not following their code would be very advantageous to the party's personal well-being or opportunities, but by choosing to follow the code, they aren't put into terrible no-win situations. For instance, you could have a situation in which the party would come into vast wealth if only they were willing to lie about where it came from, and then the paladin can go like, "Oh, sorry, gang, I can't do that." Also, avoid too much structuring your situations in which the paladin is spoiling the fun of the rest of the party. As a good paladin player, you shouldn't be positioning yourself that way anyway. Any person in the party, no matter which scale of the alignment they're at, should not have a character that is ruining the fun of the rest of the group. This is why you should always talk about what kind of characters you're wanting to play before you start playing. And if you're coming into an existing group, you should have that conversation. If it's a new group, you should have that conversations together, so that and with the GM's input, because they have an idea of what type of game they're wanting to run. The famous example for the adventure path is it's probably a bad idea to play a paladin in Storm and Shackles, because that's pirates, and that's not going to work. You're not going to be able to raid and pillage with the divine nun on the back of the boat with the giant ruler of smitingness. It's not going to be a fun time.
Now, I do believe that you don't even have to orchestrate too many situations specifically for the paladin, because adventurers just tend to be in morally gray situations. Going to the bar and just like roughing up contacts to get information is not outside of what other characters normally do. And so the paladin will just naturally come across the situations that test their code. If you do want to specifically put stress on that code, I would lean towards the lowest tenant on it. Have an evil authority who he's taken advantage of his citizens, but not in a way that's putting them in immediate harm, and has just constructed this paladin-proof situation where he gets to get away with being evil. It's pretty common for politicians to take advantage of their people by following the strictest tenets of the law. In fact, having a lawful evil villain that is just as lawful as the lawful good paladin is a great way to kind of spit in the face of the idea that there is that big of a difference between being lawful good and lawful evil. If you're following rules and you are getting the outcome you want and you're just happen to be evil and the outcome is very selfish, then man, is that frustrating for the person that believes that following the rules will ultimately lead to good.
This is, you can even test their chorused of tenets, the do not be evil or murder, by putting the paladin in a situation where they are going to observe the fact that somebody is going to be getting away with something they absolutely should not have, or especially if the stakes are personal. Now, I definitely don't ever recommend you fridge background NPCs just for shock value, but if there is a situation in which it got personal for the paladin, putting them in a situation where they could be like, it's real darn tempting to put this supervillain maniacal evil warlock out of commission for good by murdering them, would be a great way to test the tenet without the side effect being more terrible unfun for the rest of the party. And that's also a great role-playing opportunity at either of those extremes. Basically, you want it to be where the process of going through it is fun and rewarding in a story element and a character development element for everybody involved, and isn't just making one person miserable.
And I also suggest that you take your paladin player aside and discuss what constitutes murder, because there's a lot of killing in this game. Yeah. Most of it isn't murder. Most of it's self-defense. Most NPCs that should logically be trying to give up don't, because that just that just means that you've got to put all your prisoners in your equipment tracking list.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and it makes GMing hard when they start taking them alive, and you're just like, oh man, they're gonna know so many secrets now.
You need a bag of holding specifically for your prisoners.
Mm-hmm. Also,
just every now and then throw some
is lawful execution murder. They're going to be apprehending, if they take anybody alive, people that have done some terrible things in games based on the backgrounds of, like, I mean, being a bandit is not just this charismatic, innocent Disney thing, probably. They have probably killed people to take their potatoes.
Well, luckily, in the don't allow harm to come, it is pretty specific that it's got to be an innocent.
Right.
And so if someone is being executed, like one of the Skyrim cities, you just walk in and somebody is about to be hung or beheaded or whatnot, and you only have a couple of seconds as a player to react, whether you're going to interfere or just let law being carried out with no foregone knowledge about what this city constitutes lawful murder or lawful execution. Like, that's fun in Skyrim, because ultimately there's only so many consequences to killing everyone in the city to save this one person that you know nothing about.
You can't kill everyone in the city.
All right, kill everyone that you can.
Children are immortal.
I think there's a lot of people that are immortal, aren't there?
Indeed.
I don't know.
The people in that particular city, the immortal children make it very difficult to actually get away with actual murder in that game, because they're always going to see what you do, and you can't do anything about them. Not that I advocate killing children in video games. I'm just saying that that's a particular situation in which immortal people make things difficult.
So back to did you have any other thoughts on killing children?
No.
No?
I don't have any tips and tricks on that one, no.
So back to the class preview. I did not see nearly as enough about detect evil, because that's the thing that screws up campaigns for me with paladins. Not that they have to follow a code, but that if you have any amount of intrigue to the game, the paladin shows up, and with a well-timed detect, which they could do an unlimited amount of time, then they just get away with it, and it can screw up an entire campaign.
We do know two things about Detect Evil going forward from this and previous content, is that one, it's not going to be a mandatory ability all paladins get from now on. It's going to be one of the optionals. And two, it is going to be limited in some scope, so that the divine truth beacon is not constantly active and 100% accurate.
Oh, actually, yes. Now I do remember there's something about you can really only detect someone with an aura. So just being evil isn't bad enough. You have to be bad enough or dedicated to evil enough that then you get an aura.
You have to be magically evil.
Yes. Okay. So it's true. It was covered, which is good, because in that evil dictator situation, you can definitely get away with making everything seem totally normal for a long time until finally the paladin realizes, wait, this guy is just taking advantage of all these laws.
Now, we also know a few things about the paladins statistically going forward, is that they're going to be the best at armor in the at least from the playtest book. They are going to be able to get legendary armor proficiency and master weapon proficiency, and then they also revealed that the fighter gets the opposite. They get master weapon proficiency and legendary weapon proficiency and master armor proficiency. So that definitely makes paladins defensive. And they also mentioned various feats that you can get where you can protect allies and get attacks against people who dare to attack your allies, which is excellent because the game before Pathfinder as it exists right now, the amount of ways that you can actually play a protective character or quote-unquote tank is limited to a few feats, and the main one is in ultimate magic.
We do also get a little bit about the magic of paladins. There's no spell list called out, but we do know that they're going to have spell points, which is right now the generic name for the pool that all spellcasters who have a non-spell-based magical resource, such as cleric's channel energy, which has now just become a generic healing thing. So they will have spell points, but they will not be or we don't know how much of a caster they will be otherwise.
Correction. The channel energy, the cleric channeling is a separate from their spell points. This is for those domain abilities and things like like say the wizard's blinding ray for illusionist abilities, those pseudo spells and abilities that they get as part of their specialization. All clerics will get some sort of channeling, and that is going to be separate from their spell point pool.
Thank you for the correction. I was actually struggling to find an example. Any other thoughts about the paladin?
I like it a lot. I like the defensive side of things. I like how they're handling the code. I really love these litanies because that really sort of fits in with the paladin. Like these really short one-action verbal spells that they can cast in the middle of combat that just seems to fit exactly what they need for their characters really well. And the alignment issue aside, I mean, that's an argument that to be had on the forums and going forward, but as far as the base chassis and statistics that we have here, I'm really impressed, and I'm looking forward to playing one of these.
Now, unfortunately, the next blog, Gearing Up, I did not read. I am just realizing somehow I missed it. It seems to be about armor and shields and backpacks, just based on the titles. Paraf, did you read this one?
No, I also missed this one. We were quite busy during this time period when this one went up. I was doing funeral stuff when this went up. So
right. So No Salted Needed asked, how is the code different now? Did you just join us? No salt added or needed? Because that is exactly how we started talking about the paladin. Yeah. But if there was anything else specific, then maybe ask it. But if it's just broadly, you can check out the blog post from Monday.
Yeah, but a very quick for anybody that missed it. It's that there's now a hierarchy, so they're not all equal. There's an ordered list of more important to least important, and violating a least important one to uphold a more important one doesn't take all your powers away.
All right, so just quickly looking over this Gearing Up one, it looks like they really go into how touch AC is going to work. It's going to be a separate thing, TAC, and it's, as an example, studded leather gives +2 to AC and +0 to touch AC, whereas chain shirt will give +2 to AC and +1 to touch AC.
They're going full on Starfinder with this. Then that's a great. I like that about Starfinder because it means that the various armors actually matter, and it's not just here is the one statistically optimal armor type that everybody gets at each category.
All right, so that I am looking forward to digging into this blog, but I'm not going to read it live on the air.
Indeed. Did we cover what? Did we cover the weapon one last week?
No, I don't believe we did.
Okay, so weapons! Oh my gosh, weapons are so exciting right now. Basically, what they're doing with the weapons is, okay, the first thing we kind of talked about before is they're kind of making the pluses more important now. By the pluses give just straight up increases to the damage dice that the weapon deals, which we kind of knew this going ever since that one episode of the Glass Cannon podcast kind of let that be a big surprise reveal. But I think that is super important for the way the math of the system will go. It means that the level of the equipment is going to matter a lot more, and that investing in that actual plus weapon part is going to be important going forward. It also means that weapons are going to be dealing significantly more damage, and again, this is more of and this is also another area where it's like, oh, that's where this game and Starfinder kind of marry, because that's what they've done in Starfinder, but instead of the pluses, they just, in Starfinder, weapons just have a level, and past a certain level, those weapons deal more damage dice. And I like that for this going forward. And besides that section, they're also having the weapon qualities matter a lot more than they have in Pathfinder. This is like where a weapon could have like trip or I'm struggling for some of the other Pathfinder examples. But now,
yeah, but that's not how weapon quality works in second edition, at least not how it's outlined here.
No. Now those weapons actually will drastically affect how the weapon behaves in combat, as well as some of the options that you're going to have with these weapons from a turn-to-turn basis. For instance, they say that the blow staff is all about controlling the fight. It allows you, but it has reach, which, hey, staff with reach, great. Parry, which means that you can use it to increase your AC like a shield, and trip, which it always had, which means you can use it for trip attacks, as opposed to let's see, the glaive, which they talked about as the comparison for that. It also has a d8 damage, but it's deadly, which means that it does extra damage on crits, which above normal damage. It's not like doing a crit won't do more damage. It just means in addition to the normal crit damage, you roll extra d8s on top of that, so it's even more crit damage. I think this is because of how they're structuring crits. In Pathfinder, this would be like a × 3 weapon. It has forceful, meaning that its subsequent attacks hit harder, so the more you build up momentum. So this is a weapon that you would actually fight differently with this weapon than you would another weapon. It would very much encourage you to take that second and third attack, whereas a lot of people are mathing that some of the optimal strategies are to not take that third attack. Well, this is giving you a very statistical reason that, hey, you might want to go for it because you're going to deal a lot more damage on that third attack than you would before that. I
also want to bring up something. It looks like a change to reach. It says allowing you to strike enemies up to 10 feet away. So instead of it just being, now you've got this dead zone that just made it made reach weapons not only awkward, but a kind of an absurd visual where the person with the longest weapon is doing this weird hop around so that they're always 10 feet away from people. And of course, if you're in a diagonal hallway and it just happens to be mapped to the northeast instead of straight east or straight north, technically you can't hit anybody except an attack of opportunity. And attacks of opportunity were divisive. So it just seems like now a reach weapon is just longer and gives you an opportunity to also strike further, but doesn't mean you're completely defenseless when somebody's right next to you and you've got this giant weapon.
And that's a change that's really needed. I mean, that was a change they made to Pathfinder from 3, where that's how reach behaved in every version of this game before Pathfinder. And then moving on...
That's not how reach worked in 3.
Really?
Reach had the dead zone.
Oh.
The difference was that there was an exception to the diagonal. You could hit 10 feet or 15 feet at a diagonal. And that was changed to just 10 feet, and it caused all kinds of the problems that making that an exception to the diagonal rules solved. And eventually, I believe that was errated, so it did work again like it does in 3. Or maybe it was just 3.5, but there was definitely a pre-Pathfinder era where reach weapons made you very vulnerable immediately in front of you.
But and this also was a weird area where that was a rule for players that often wasn't a rule for monsters, because size reach behaved completely differently.
Yeah.
Where there was the superior reach, just being bigger meant that you didn't have that problem. And so it was just this really weird corner case of the rules that was basically just annoying. And then you would try to take feats to mitigate it, or you would spend rounds choking up, and then unchoking up when you needed to basically pull in your reach or extend your reach. And then you had cool feats that Pathfinder added, like lunge, which meant you could toggle on reach. And within that, how did that apply to the rest of your attacks? I just make it simple, make it work. I think that it never should have had the dead zone area. I understand that there's some realism there and some tactics opportunities there, but it's like the complicated rules for how to fly almost never matter, even though they take up a huge part of the book.
So what you were calling weapon quality is actually called weapon traits in 2nd edition, and there is a second section to this blog about weapon quality, and this is something when we were talking about our initial thoughts about 2nd edition that was implied in one of the playtest episodes that Glass Cannon put out, and I'm glad it's really codified here, because I didn't like thematically that masterwork weapons were super common and barely meant anything to the wielder, whereas if you think of the masterwork of an artist, this is their Mona Lisa. Does everyone have the Mona Lisa of daggers on their person because they just happened to find it on a knoll one day? Like, it didn't reflect what a masterwork weapon should be. Well, now weapon qualities are much more gradient, and the masterwork ones are much further on the end of high quality. So you've got poor quality, which I guess is going to be similar to fragile weapons. I don't know, but I'd imagine if you fight a Neanderthal, his weapons will be poor quality. Standard quality, expert quality, master quality, and legendary quality. And this is all separate from any magical enchantment. This is just how well is this thing made, so that when a dwarf says, I am the finest crafter, that means that it means something. It means that a wizard won't come up and say, that's really nice that your weapon is super fancy, but with one spell, it's even better now. And I could have done that to one that didn't need to be as fancy as you just made it. So this non-magical range of improving weapons, that's something I'm looking forward to playing around with, because, you know, I'm a weapon guy. I'm not a magic guy. This is my domain right here, Param.
And, yeah, and I also like the inclusion of, like, the legendary quality. I think this is great. I think it's just all around great. And also, I kind of like the idea of having poor quality weapons that have magic on them in dungeons. Like, this used to be a great hammer, but it's been buried in Umber Hulk waste for the past 3 centuries, so here you go.
Degraded. And finally, one thing that I like is making exotic weapons feel a little bit more worth it, because as it describes here, exotic weapons are not just a mixture of powerful European weapons and weapons from other countries that are only occasionally had a leg up over their martial kin. And I remember we had a forum member named Tetsubo, and he was just livid when he found out that the Tetsubo, the weapon that he was named after, which was just a stick with a nail in it, really, that it was an exotic weapon just on the basis of it being an Eastern weapon. And he made a good argument, because mechanically it had no benefits. Historically, this was the weapon of peasants, and it was Eurocentric, and it was a weird build decision. And I know personally, because of my Mad Dog Barbarian with a kangaroo, I wanted to give him a boomerang, but the fact that the boomerang was an exotic weapon and it didn't come back to you, because fine, realistically they don't come back to you, but you know what? I don't need realism. If I want a boomerang, I want it to come back to me. And I don't want it to be an exotic, like a weapon that I need exotic weapon proficiency for, when it's really just a blunt dart.
Yeah, and it's especially true for Pathfinder, that has expanded itself to be about so much more than just Euro fantasy, because they draw on so many different myths and cultures from around the globe for their bestiary and storylines, that is just not tenable going forward.
Yeah, so you know what? Make the katana exotic, because only the finest warriors got katanas, but don't make a commoner weapon exotic just because it's not from around here.
Indeed. If it's the equivalent of a big old beater stick, it should still just be a big old beater stick. So that's all the blogs, preview blogs, that we didn't cover.
For the 2nd edition playtest, yes, we do have the blog about the adventure card game playtest. we only give the occasional lip service to the adventure card game for the reasons you mentioned earlier, that it actually became so robust, it became its own thing. And really, because it's neither of our things, there's only so much we can even understand what to be excited about when news comes out. But I do know that either last year or the year before, support for the adventure card game was majorly slowed down. It went from they were releasing adventure paths as giant box on a regular basis to just releasing new character class packs and continuing to support it through Adventure Card Game Society. So the idea was that they were going to restructure it, but they didn't have a timeline for it, and they didn't want to set a timeline because they wanted to make sure they got it right so that it was the best the game could be, that it made sense in the modern market, because those boxes for the adventure card game were massive and mostly empty, and then you had to buy the upgrade packs to fill up your box. But if you didn't know that, and that's a lot of information to explain on a box in a store, that a lot of people just had a bad taste in their mouth when they open this massive box and find they've only got a corner of it full of content, and that their gaming shelf needs to have that much real estate taken up for a sixth of a box of content. So these are the kind of questions that Paizo and Logan Shark Games wanted to look at and say, like, how do we make sure that this continues to be the game that our community wants, that game stores want to handle, and that obviously we'll be making the money because, look, it's part of the process.
Now, they do say that this isn't a full reboot of the rules, so it's not going to just throw out all the previous cards you've collected, and that this is basically going to be a new universal base set, and they'll go into more of the details at PaizoCon about what that means. So hopefully that this sounds more like what I'm used to when like a game like Magic or Versus gets a new edition. It just means changes to how we play, and maybe I need to get some new versions of some cards, but I don't throw out my whole collection.
So I hope to get involved in this playtest at PaizoCon 2018, because as Mike Sellinger has pointed out, I was in the playtest for PaizoCon 2012 when it was just Project Swallowtail, and I am the first person to have a character die in the adventure card game.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I pushed Mauriciel's luck too far, and it cost her.
Well, in that very first version of the game, it was real easy to die. In subsequent card game base sets, it was a little bit less brutal. But under that very first rulebook in the Rise of the Rune Lords, it was a tough game.
Yeah, I remember when I finally played the published game. Actually, I don't know if I ever played published Rise of the Rune Lords. I think I went straight to Skull and Shackles as far as my first card game experience, but Skull and Shackles was a lot more survivable.
All right. What else?
I would like to talk a little bit about what our plans are for PaizoCon.
We've got PaizoCon plans?
Param, we've got more PaizoCon plans than we've ever had before.
I know.
First of all, I would like to talk about our official events. Either all of us are involved in the network or just myself. I'll be running a couple of events. Let me open these links up. First one I will talk about will be the one we're doing together. It is, I don't want to call it a tradition because we've only done it twice before, but it's been fun both times that we've done it, and that would be No Direction Live from PaizoCon.
Oh, we've done that before, and I've had to phone in for it.
That was fun because everyone that was involved in the network other than you was there. We patched you in on a giant screen behind us all, and so we actually had the full network present at PaizoCon. That was the only time that it's happened up till now. Probably the only time it ever will as the network continues to grow.
I mean, I can sit outside in the hallway with a laptop if you want me to call in again.
Yes, please do, because having you on the screen is definitely more valuable than having you there in person for the first time. So this is a Saturday morning event, and it was added after the fact because there was miscommunication. We have No Direction Adventurous Live, which we'll talk about in a minute, and No Direction Live, which was only added after Param confirmed that you were going to be at PaizoCon. And so Sara Murray was planning the events, and she didn't realize those were two separate events. So this was added after the fact. You may not have noticed it if you've only looked at the event schedule when it was first released.
But it did go live before event registration opened, so yeah. So if you want to book for that, go to the event registration and book up for it. We're definitely going to have it. And you also mentioned the other event we're going to have, No Direction Adventurous Live. What can you tell me about that?
Yes. This one is going to be a 5-hour block. No. 10 to 1. What's that? 3 hours?
3 hours. If this was a 5-hour block, Ryan, I was about to mute the microphones for a second.
Sorry. It is a 3-hour event, and this one will be more similar to when you Skyped in a couple of years ago, because we were going to try and have the entire cast of No Direction Adventurous. Those who are not there live, which would include Ari, Kathy, and Lauren. Lauren was on the fence at one point, but I believe officially she will not be attending PaizoCon. But we will be getting her to Skype in, and plan A is to run 2 full sessions that will be released as regular. Oh, sorry, Lauren just messaged me on Facebook. I thought maybe this was related to it, but it's completely unrelated. Mm-hmm. Sorry. Yeah, so the intent is that these will be 2 regular episodes released. And if you are up to date on the PaizoCon episodes that are released as of this recording, like as of the recording of this live episode, then you will be up to date when we talk about these, when these episodes are recorded. If any of the people from the cast are not available, then we will replace them with a member of the audience, and it will be either a flashback or an out-of-continuity adventure that Crystal has says she is willing to make up more or less on the fly. I don't know when.
She is pulling off some GM tricks that just leave me in awe. How she's managing to shuffle all of those noble NPCs and keep them different in the middle of that party, and then just like bounce back and forth between all of us. That takes some skills. I mean, we knew she was going to be great, but daggone.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you have any questions about how she does that, Param, like I said, it's going to be 2 sessions or 2 episodes recorded, which means that we will have about an hour to, first of all, manage any technical things, but then also just to chat about the process, how No Direction Adventures came to be, how it's going, where people would like it to go from here, and get every cast member's insight, because everyone seems to be having a really good time and has, at least internally, everyone's had very positive things to say, and externally, we've gotten a lot of really good feedback.
Yep. I was doubtful on any sort of actual play for the network, but this has just been wonderful.
Well, I have stories, Param, but we'll save them for No Direction Adventures Live.
Ooh. But you're doing 2 other events.
Yes. So, my first one is Friday morning. Friday afternoon from 1 until 3. It is no prep gaming. And actually, I do just want to bring up the fact that Troy LaValle from the Glass Cannon podcast is doing a session on how prep is everything, and you really have to prep to be a GM. So I kind of like that he's doing that one, and I'm doing like, just show up and let's do something. Because what I'm doing, I'm basically going to have a Mad Libs style page where it's like, we're going to fill this in with monsters, adjectives, villains, plot, and then I'm going to run it for live members of the audience. So it's going to be both a workshop on how to improvise as GM and an improvised game, or at least an hour of it. And I'm hoping to really just fill a campaign into a single session. So we'll probably be really quick with combat and more emphasis on how you're going to improvise a story, and how GMing is very much about reacting to what the players are doing. So this is a complete experiment for me. I have never done anything like this, but no prep GMing is something that I am very much passionate about, have strong feelings towards, and I'm looking forward to telling people and showing people how it works.
Interesting. I respect no prep GMs, and I cannot be one of them.
That's fine. I respect prep GMs, and I cannot be one of them. Finally, board games as Pathfinder subsystems. This is something that came to me because a lot of the times the Pathfinder subsystems, especially when they're tied to adventure paths, don't quite work. Like, they're either easily exploited, or there's just like, within a couple of months of the official rules coming out, you've got a third-party version of it that's usually mathematically superior. I'm not sure what it is, but if you don't have access to third-party publisher alternative to a subsystem, or you just want to incorporate an idea into your game, instead of making a whole subsystem, board games are basically subsystems. They are conflict resolution set to a theme that can usually be erased, and then if you want to just like the one that's going to be my starting point is talking about how Lords of Waterdeep actually lets you play the campaign from the point of view of the quest givers who have all these ulterior motives. And so that's actually a new way that you can incorporate another side of an adventure together and then just swap out and have the combats taking place between these hapless characters that the players are just, they get to have very little attachment to and play as very archetypal, who think they're doing the best for the world, but really they're pushing towards some Machiavellian plot of some nefarious noble. That's going to be one of my examples. I'm going to be going through a whole bunch of board games. I have a lot of board games in my collection. I have designed board games at this point. I am the curator of Board Game Bento, so I have a lot of insight into how board games work and how they can be ported over. So this is 1 hour on Friday. It's Friday afternoon from 5 until 6. And again, it's a bit of an experiment for me. I've never run seminars like this. I've been involved in community run ones, which were basically versions of No Direction Live, but with just me and some guests, and it was just interview segments. But this is going to be whole new, like, I am prepping slideshows, and I am going to make sure that I am fully prepared with all kinds of examples and documents. I'm going to go from character creation all the way to campaign, like playing out a full campaign in a fraction of the time by using board games to cut out what could become like long-form storytelling, turning it into short-form storytelling.
Excellent. Are you going to incorporate the trader mechanic into the demos?
I can. When I did the GM Like a Trader article for Behind the Screens, that is my favorite banner that I put together, where it's the Battlestar Galactica box behind the GM screen, and it just happens to line up so everyone's just peering over.
It was one of my
every now and then
ones.
I catch it in my feed and I'm like, man, that's funny. I did good on that one. So beyond actually running events, Param, what are you looking forward to at PaizoCon?
Well, first, I really am looking forward to actually seeing a lot of these people that I barely get to see in the flesh very often, even though they're some of the people I'm closest to in the world. That's always amazing. There is some probably some business things I will need to deal with while I'm there related to projects that we're dealing with as a network. I am looking forward to gaming with some of the Paizo peeps. I only got one lottery event, but it was super cool. And then there are other things that we're not talking about that also are going to be super cool for us.
Oh, yes. You know what? I actually did not throw into the lottery this year. Even though the lottery games that I have played in the past have been highlights. Stephen Randy McFarlane's Evil campaign that I played in either last year or the year before. Mark Seifter ran me through a game where it was like everyone at the table had this elaborate extra planar backstory, but we're pretending to be these very average characters, and so it was playing out like a typical campaign, but we all had this deep well of alternative things, and just he went over the entire plot at the end because 4 hours only kind of scratched the surface of it, but just the variety of directions that he could have taken us in and the smoothness with which he went with the ones that we focused on was mind-blowing to me. Like, just I've often marveled at Mark Seifter's brain, and never more so than when I saw him GMing that not really campaign, but just that session.
Ooh, sounds fun. The only official event I'm booked at is I'm in Jason Keeley's Skitter Shot, the Skittermander Free RPG Day adventure, and that's going to be super fun because Keeley is awesome, and Skittermanders are awesome.
Yeah, that should be really fun. Like Skittermanders, like we know they're adorable and we know we like them, but we haven't really delved into what it is that makes them so awesome.
I like that they're not. I like that they're opposite goblins because it'd be so much easier for them to be goblins and us to have just more goblin hijinks in space. And if you look at how they pitched Starfinder, they very much were thinking that was what was going to happen. The goblin mascot would continue into space, and then more shenanigans with space goblins would happen. But we get the exact opposite. We get the super helpful, cute things that are way too helpful. These are this is the species that gave up their planet to the invading lizard people because they didn't want to be an inconvenience, so they helped them out with taking over their own planet.
Is that what happened?
Yes, that's what happened.
I'm not caught up on my Skittermander stuff. Lore, I guess.
Which is
I'm trying to find. Go ahead.
Which is like, if you have ever had the talk, we talked about the controversy with the goblins and how, man, these are going to be so problematic. There's no such thing as a problematic Skittermander. They have to get along.
So I never found the Friday evening special. Do you know anything about it?
No. This is all coming in hot because what I prep for a convention and you prep for a convention are completely different than what your average person preps for a convention, because we're emailing Paizo and trying to make schedules work and making sure that we can cover events and trying to recruit volunteers. And I'm more like, okay, when is this seminar? When is that seminar? Make sure we can cover it, to make sure we get all this stuff for recording. And then where can I squeeze in games, as opposed to where's all, I just don't go into this like a typical attendee where it's just, how can I have the most fun? Which I will have a massive amount of fun, and working with this network is a massive amount of fun. But I mean, my schedule is still not even completely finalized yet. I haven't even had a chance to look at it beyond the lottery events of what I want to do for fun. And even then, I knew signing up for some of those lottery events that I might have to back out if there's an important thing that has to be covered or something that clashes with an interview.
Yeah, last year, so on this topic, I was in the Hammond Coons game, and I remember it being a 4-hour block. This was my lottery game. But then that morning, I checked the schedule in the Pathfinder program, and it was only a 2-hour block. So I was like, oh, okay, I will take my time this morning. I will set up the recorders and just relax and then go to my game maybe 10, 15 minutes early. And when I get there, everyone's around the table, and I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, well, your ticket said it was 4 hours, and it had a 4-hour start time, started 2 hours ago, and everywhere except for in the program, it says that it's a 4-hour slot. And it's just like, oh no, I live and die by that program. Like, so much of my PaizoCon depends on me being in so many places at exact moments right before a new panel goes on to double check all the recorders. Anyway, like, Amanda was very cool about bringing me in and working me into the adventure. But that, for a second there, that was a terrible moment.
Oh no. But hey, you're going to have a lot of more help this year.
I am. Honestly, PaizoCon coverage runs itself. I just leave the recorders there. The Paizo staff all knows what's going on. They all trust, like, I trust them with the recorders lying around. So, like, having people backing me up is great. But, like, it's pretty self-sufficient
we
at this
probably
point.
shouldn't advertise too much on that point.
I trust people.
I don't, because I'm an American, and and I definitely don't trust at Gen Con that I can.
Yes, Gen Con's a different story.
Like, I have to have people I trust in the volunteer room, in the seat, watching the recorders, because there have been shenanigans. People have turned off our recorders just to be jerks. We know, because we have audio of them saying, "Hey, I'm going to turn this off now and see what happens."
Wow.
Yeah, when I was doing some of the editing for the convention, we had that happen. I was like, no, you horrible people. Why did you do this? You just cost thousands of people their chance to experience this panel. Just have a goof?
Yeah. Well, luckily, that's not the kind of people that I've experienced with that PaizoCon. Although, Justin Sluter, he is in chat, and he points out he lives in the seminar rooms, and it's true. Like, part of the reasons I can trust people, are that I can trust the seminar rooms to keep my recorders safe, is that we've got Justin Sluter and a couple of other volunteers that we'll just keep an eye on them. So it's very rare we have a recorder in a room without somebody that I trust there beyond the Paizo staff, which, you know, they've got enough things going on that weekend.
We need to do something to just really appreciate our volunteer crew. Because you guys are heroes. We can't do this with just me and Ryan, and even the rest of the network members have their own responsibilities. It's just not possible, and it would mean giant holes in our coverage, missed seminars, things like that, whereas with the volunteer help, we're able to get so much more done. Which is a great time to mention that if you're going to Gen Con and wish to be a volunteer for No Direction, let me know. We still need a significant chunk of people for Gen Con coverage. I do not know if the Paizo event schedule is out yet. I do know it was not out during the opening of registration for their seminar events. Their gaming events were out, so if you're looking to book games and stuff, that's great. But if you've got some time or intending to attend any schedules or can just help out, even if you can just record a panel or two means that one of us gets to eat. And that's sometimes super appreciated. Just even being able to just get some fresh air sometimes, because like, it's not that we are super booked up, but sometimes we get like a row of like 6 hours in a row that we have to be there, and just being able to just take a break is everything.
Also, if you want to help me with PaizoCon coverage, even though we do have a lot of network members there, feel free to let me know. You can message me on the Facebook page. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with us.
All right.
So, there is an event I do want to bring attention to. It tickles me. The Dungeon of Distress. So, what happened was, a couple of years ago at PaizoCon, Joy Orr she found a material that was basically 1-inch squares. And so she made a dress out of it and then brought permanent markers and was inviting people to add rooms to this dress that she made.
Oh.
And I was chatting with her and, again, Amanda Hammond-Coons, coincidentally, and we were just talking about, like, oh, you should run it next year at PaizoCon. And she challenged us to come up with a name for the event. And I got really quiet and, like, just my gears started shifting. And I was like, all right, the Dungeon of Distress. And apparently she liked it enough that she named the event that. She is running it this year. And she even called me out on Facebook thanking me and asking if I remembered that I came up with Distress as a name as a pun for her dress. And I told her that it was one of my highlights as someone who makes puns.
That's a great event. That's fantastic. I love it. I love everything about that.
Yeah, it is kind of, if I could sum up PaizoCon in a single event, that would be it. So, are there any other seminars that you've noticed that have your attention?
No, I'm sorry. I'm kind of overwhelmed and brain dead on that front right now. I'm going to have to go stare at the slots again, but no, I can't call anything else out.
That's fair. Well, then I will bring to your attention that if you are interested in attending the glass cannon stuff, that's the only seminars that look like they're really filling up already.
Yeah, so if you're going to do glass cannon, make sure you book that up. And we also appreciate it if you sign up for our stuff. But yeah, if you're going to miss out on the glass cannon stuff if you don't sign up soon. And those guys are great. Oh, also our friends over at Roll for Combat are also having some live stuff at the show. They're sponsoring us for PaizoCon. They're some of the reasons that we're going to be able to have the full crew there. So definitely give them a shout out and a look. I have been really enjoying. I've been really enjoying their new Starfinder Society actual play, which is hilarious, but I'm biased because I just really love Starfinder Society.
So how does that play into their the adventure path? They're Dead Suns?
Yeah, they're running through Dead Suns right now, and they're 6 months into it. So like 30-some episodes, and that's still ongoing. So this is in addition to that. They're running through Starfinder Society adventures with different characters, and because it's Starfinder Society, they're bringing in, like, they're changing the cast up between adventures, so they can have different guests in to run the adventure. So there'll be a rotating cast and guest players in that, and they're running through the adventures, and those are standalone. So it's like, the whole thing will be like 4 episodes. Only part 3 of the first one has come out, and that one's just been very good. I like it better than their main show. I mean, I hate to say that, but I like it better than their main show.
You're allowed to have opinions. just looking over some of the events to see if there's anything to call attention to. There's going to be Nostalgia in Gaming, which is probably going to be a sequel to Everything I Know About Fantasy I Learned from Cartoons, or something to that effect. It's got Crystal and Mark Moreland as the people running the seminar, so I have a feeling it's going to be very much in that vein. Oh, also one of the things you will notice is that you'll often get 1 or 2 speakers listed, and then by the time you get there, a couple more people have been added, probably just from lunchroom chat, where they're going to be like, I've got this seminar. It's like, I have so many things to say about that. So I expect at least one more person to be added to that before it goes live. Comics, minis, and more licensing IP at Paizo. That is exactly in my wheelhouse, so that is something that I expect to go and check out. It's got Glenn Elliott, Eric Mona, and once again, Mark Moreland. And it might actually be conflicting. No, it's right before my first one, the No Prep GMing seminar. So I'll probably check this out and then run to mine. Also, one of the things you'll notice about the PaizoCon seminars is that there tends to be a nice relaxed transition. So even though it's booked end to end, they usually end about 5 minutes early. They pick up a little more casually, and you get a good solid 50 minutes of the topic. So you get your money's worth. Well, your money. All the seminars are free, although getting there is obviously going to cost you some money. But like most things at PaizoCon, it's got a more casual atmosphere, and things are just like more focused on the content that the players will want. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like you cut the line to get to straight to, we are talking to people about things that we know we have in this shared hobby in common. And so we get to talk immersively about these topics instead of having to introduce them for half the conversation and introduce who the speakers are. Like, by the end of the first day, every speaker assumes everyone at PaizoCon has been to at least one seminar they were on and knows who they are. Mm-hmm. And so they can just power through introductions, power through the introduction of the topic, and then get into the meat of the conversation.
Yeah, and that always threw me off. It is something that's only really been happening the last few years at Gen Con, because those first few years at Gen Con, the only people showing up for Paizo stuff was the super informed users that knew who Paizo was. Before they became the #1 role-playing game in the industry, and that was that period of time. That's when that shift happened. But you'll get in, and then they'll open up questions, and they're going to be like, "What is a Starfinder? How are a card game?" And I know that's legit. People at Gen Con, you can't assume they know everything, but at PaizoCon, you're not going to PaizoCon if you only kind of know what Pathfinder is.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I have managed to get to PaizoCon just about every year since my first one, because it's conversations you can't have anywhere else. Even within my gaming group, they're into Pathfinder up to a certain point, but not like PaizoCon people are in Paizo and Pathfinder and all the topics I love talking about. All right, Param, I think we're about ready to wrap things up. I know it feels weird. It's 9:30, and yet it feels like 10:30, 11, just because we started early today. Yeah. It's probably going to screw up my sleep for the rest of the week, if I'm honest. Actually, no, I'll probably get more sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, I'm okay with this. Are we ready to wrap things up?
I mean, if you want us to do it the opposite next time, we'll start at 10:30 and then just go till 2 in the morning.
I do not want that.
Okay.
Thanks for the offer.
Yeah, let's wrap this up.
All right, we'll be right back to wrap things up right after this.
Wrap-ups and shout-outs. Wrap-ups and shout-outs. Wrap-ups. Wrap-ups and shout-outs.
And we're back.
Zito Raven in chat is suggesting a 24-hour no direction channel. Now, I don't know about a sustained 24-hour no direction channel, but the idea of one day just for 24 hours, if we did like a charity event, I wonder if we could pull that off.
There are ways, especially if there would also be tolerable of us doing things that aren't Pathfinder related, Starfinder related for some of those hours, like watch Param make a map in Photoshop, and as I comment on how I pull that off for 2 hours. I don't know if you'd be interested in that, but that's something I could do.
we're just going to put that. Let's put that on the back burner for now.
Yeah.
In the wrap-ups.
Sorry.
In the wrap-ups and shout-out, we... I don't even know anymore. Oh, Perm, I'm sorry. I've been so frazzled today, and I have no excuse for why. So what do we do in the wrap-ups and shout-outs? Now I remember. Yeah. Thank you for joining us for episode 178 of No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. Thank you to Sara Maria, our guest today, for telling us all about what's to be excited about for PaizoCon. Before we go, we have a couple of things that we want to highlight that might be of some some interest to our listeners. First one being the Gauntlet. The Gauntlet is a fundraising tournament that every year Paizo staff is involved in. This year the subtitle is The Realms, or just The Gauntlet Realms, which I don't think it's ever had a subtitle before, so I'm curious how that plays out. But on Team Paizo this year is the network's very own Luis Loza.
Woohoo! Go Luis!
Yeah, because as we talked about last episode, he's not just the network's own, he's also Paizo's own. And so he will be helping participate in this tournament and trying to raise money for the Wellspring Family Services. A few years ago, Paizo actually won this tournament, and you can probably have seen some pictures of Paizo staffers with a giant silver gauntlet. Well, I think this year, given the popularity of Infinity War, the desire to own a gauntlet, or at least temporarily for photo ops, is going to be particularly intense, and so I expect the fundraising records to be broken for the Gauntlet this year. And if you want to check out what the benefits to you for supporting the fundraiser are, you can go to thegauntlet2018.causevox. Cause is in, donating to a cause. Vox is in VOX.com. And specifically, if you want to support Luis, it's /Luis-Loza. That's LUIS-LOZA. ZA? This is the last letter of the alphabet. We pronounce it differently up here. Also, this is something that was just brought to my attention. Wayfinder 19 call for submissions. So Wayfinder is the annual companion to the program for PaizoCon at this point. It is a great way to get... it's a fanzine. It has officially licensed Paizo in-world content, and every year it's given out at PaizoCon. It's run by Tim Nightingale and his very talented staff, and has been going on since the original PaizoCon. Literally the first year they did the first issue. It's a free zine that has been contributed to by Paizo staffers, both before and while they were working at Paizo, and after, I'm sure, in some cases. Also some of their freelancers, including some of their fiction writers. And it's just something we love very much, and I don't want to miss the call for submission again this year. So Paizo Wayfinder number 19 will be at PaizoCon 2019, so this is the early kickoff for what they are looking for. And you know what? I was so excited to add it to my list that I didn't actually open it up to see what the theme was this year. Oh, the theme is Starfinder's Absalom Station, Param.
Ooh, yes, he was super excited that this is going to be the first Starfinder themed issue of Wayfinder, and Absalom Station is ripe for all kinds of cool content because it's this massive space station where they haven't even explored all of it yet because it is miles and miles and miles of layers of tunnels.
So I'm just double checking what to do if I actually want Pathfinder first edition content in there. Okay, so it's part because Starfinder has really found its feet, and part because Pathfinder second edition will still be in its playtesting phase, and that's why the May 2019 issue of Wayfinder will be Starfinder focused. That makes sense. All right, I support this, Tim. Mm-hmm. And finally, we've been talking about it all episode, but PaizoCon is coming. It is 16 days away, according to No Direction's official PaizoCon countdown correspondent, Darren Kaldmeyer. He has been diligently sending me the updated images and keying them to the specific dates they should go up, because I have messed up a couple of the images, putting them on the wrong dates this year. So he's making sure that it's that I'm going to get it right. He is doing everything he can to Ryan-proof this plan. Mm-hmm. PaizoCon, May 25th to 28th. That is a Friday to a Monday at the Doubletree by Hilton Hotels in Seattle. If you want to know more about it, just listen to this episode again. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty good way of getting most of the information you'll need for PaizoCon. Param and I will be there. We have several events, which we've already talked about, and we are looking forward to seeing No Direction listeners and fans, Param, if somebody wants to know you, how are they going to recognize you?
Probably the brown hat.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
People are listening to this as a podcast. Just go to the Facebook page where our faces are in the banner. We still look like that, even though that picture's getting a little bit old.
Yeah.
Is that the same brown hat?
Yeah, it's the same hat. I've had this hat a while, which is why it is got holes in it. It's sad.
Oh. Until next time, I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
And if you want to find the path, you need no direction.